I'm riffing on this, Mark, because we've actually started answering a question that I got that I didn't even pose to us yet, but it's, how do you design these workflows that feel personal but still scale? And another thing that kind of got really drilled into me, your friend Kendall Young, Glendale Diggs, she at one point said to you, Mark, I don't understand what the word scale means. And this is not the thing that you step on to check what gravity's doing for you. This is the idea that I can deliver that great experience helping one person, or I can give that same exact experience helping 100 people at the exact same time. And I don't have to stress out, because anything that can be handled or taken off my plate can be through these systems that we're building. And so that's the idea of scaling. Whether you're working with one person or you scale, you're able to grow the number of people you can help at once to 100, to 1,000, to 100,000. Gosh, I hope you don't have 100,000 transactions going on at once all by yourself. Let's do, at least hire an assistant, but you could, because of these systems. And I think that is such a powerful idea. So Mark, I suppose let's riff on that one then. How do you design these automations that still feel personal, but also scale?
Sure. So we would go through and say, okay, take a look at what you're currently doing. Every 30 minutes, log what you're doing, and it would start giving you a window into your day in life as a real estate agent. You would see that you're doing certain things for certain people. And if you do that for a 2-week period, you're probably going to see patterns of things. You could write them down on a sticky note, put them up on the wall, identify where that particular process was happening in your bigger scope of things. And seeing the bigger picture of what you're currently doing to service your people. Going back to core strategies, what are all the things that you do from the time you get that lead that comes into your database all the way until they do finally decide to sign on the dotted line? There's a series of emails and phone calls and text messages and visits or personal visits, whatever happens, you're doing something. Once they do sign on the dotted line and you've got your listing agreement, your buyer's agreement, all the way to closing day, there's really 2 parts to that, the listing marketing side and the contract to close side. But all of the things that you do to service your customers through a successful marketing and closing. Maybe you're just a buyer's agent, so maybe you're just handling that contract to close process, and that's fine too. But what is it that you do to give them an experience that is memorable? Well, maybe you're not doing anything that's memorable, but there are certain things that you've got to do. Get those things written down first. What's the necessities? I've got deadlines. I've got contract obligations that have to be met. And if they're not met, those types of things cause things to stop working. You get big problems because somebody forgot to sign a certain form or whatever. Well, if that's the case, put in safeguards at each different point at which those things could happen. And if they do happen, you've got a safeguard to prevent it from happening. So you're putting in the systems that you're putting in place initially is just thinking about, what are my deadlines? What are the things that I have to do in order to make this a successful transaction? Once that part is done, we can breathe a little bit, because now we at least have the deadline elements in place to prevent things from falling through the cracks. Now there's still plenty of cracks, but there are things that you can do. Now think about, if somebody calls you and asks you a question during the marketing phase or during the closing phase, at what point does that question come into play? And if you have multiple people asking that same question at that same point, here's the problem. You're not giving them the answer ahead of time. They're having to reach out. You're not giving them the experience. They're having to question what you're doing. So now you have to go through the process of saying, okay, at this point in my process, typically people will have this particular question. Let's answer that question next. Let's put that into play. And whatever, maybe they don't ask that question, but by having it in your system, you at least cut it off before it comes to you, before they start questioning whether or not you know what you're doing. So you're now anticipating those processes that you're putting in place to be able to fulfill their needs before they even know they need them. So you get all those in place. Just think about all the different questions that you've gotten at different points and figure out at what point could I answer that before I get that email, before I get that phone call. At that point, then you're freeing up the time that it's going to take to calm them down or feed that information back to them. You're saving that time in the future for other people. Okay. Then you start going through and you start looking at, once I've got my deadline stuff, once I've pre-answered all my questions for my contacts and stuff, now I can start looking in and it's like, how can I surprise and delight this person? How can I make it more of an experience that they will enjoy this process? Can I give them something? Can I fulfill some need that that particular person has at this particular point in time through the transaction that maybe they didn't even know they needed, you know? And by doing that, they remember you, you know, giving them that experience and wrapping those experiential elements throughout the entire core strategy process gives them then that information ahead of time. They don't question you. The process works. Everything is more streamlined. You don't get those frantic calls at different points through the process. And you go home at night and you don't have to worry about the things left undone. You don't have to worry about, did this certain thing get done? Because the system makes sure that it does get done. You don't have to worry about it. So many times, real estate agents don't have their systems in place. And the worry, the fret, the fears that they get are not necessarily from things that the client is doing. It's because they're having to play catch up all the time to make sure that everything does get done. And now you're stressing over things while you're at home with your family. And that's the time that you need to be focused in with your family, enjoying your family, because, you know, family grows up quick, especially, you know, little kids, they become young adults. So, I've been blessed, but so many times, the agents get burnt out. I had a call today where one of the agents was talking about how, because of the way this business is, how many challenges that come up all the time, that a lot of them can be preempted and prevented, but aren't. And then that causes stress through phone calls of elevated conversation, you know, all the things that happen that people get upset about. A lot of it can be de-escalated very easily, very quickly, by preempting it with content of the context, knowing what they're going through, and being able to identify those elements that you know inevitably, because you've done it so many times, that you can make it happen. You can give them the information before it happens, and then you don't have that problem. And now I can go home and I can not be stressed.
Well, and think about it this way too. You as a real estate agent are the expert. And so not only is thinking through the questions that they're going to have beforehand and then providing the answers to them, it's allowing you to step into that role as the expert and verify and prove to them that you're the expert. But then you're also not having to be in that overwhelm, burning the candle at both ends kind of moment that is ultimately going to, you know, if you like, let's assume you're so overwhelmed, you're so burned out, maybe you just like accidentally, you know, say a little sharp statement to one of your customers. Well, that could be the transaction. Or you say it to your significant other or your family. Well, gosh, now you've just hurt those relationships. Over what? Over not thinking about a small process. So this is an opportunity for you to step up in the expert role that you already exist in, and to be able to do that really powerfully.